Good morning and welcome to the County of Brant Police Services Board meeting for December 6, 2022. This is the first board meeting of the term and this election cycle. So first of all, I would like to note that attendance has been taken. We welcome back Mayor Bailey, Councillor Pierce as our council representatives, Jim Brown, Marty Verhey as our provincial appointees, and Jennifer Haley as our council appointee. And first of all, I'd like to have Jen come up and take the affirmation of office for Police Services Board. And Jen, if you wouldn't mind reading the oath, and then I'll have you swear it.
Okay. So I, Jennifer Haley, solemnly affirm that I will be loyal to Canada and that I will uphold the Constitution of Canada and that I will, to the best of my ability, discharge my duties as a member of the County of Brant Police Services Board, faithfully, impartially, and according to the Police Services Act, any other act, and any regulation, rule, or bylaw.
There you go. Thank you. That's it. That's it. Thank you. So now I would like to call for appointments for the election of chair of the Police Services Board. Member Brown.
I would like to nominate Jennifer Haley for chair.
Jen, do you accept?
Yes, with thanks.
Is there any more nominations? Councillor Pierce. And seconder to close? Thank you. And nominations for the position of vice chair? Jen.
I would like to nominate Member Brown.
Is there any more nominations? Move to close? Thank you. Jen, would you like to assume the chair?
Whoop. Now we got to get readjusted in this chair. Oh, I can't figure out the buttons. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thank you. December 6th already. How does that happen? It's been a while since we met in September, and a lot's happened since then with new council and reappointments and everything else. So you have your agenda package in front of you. Is there any items to add before we do the approval? Member Brown?
Madam Chair, if possible, I'd like to add one item to an in-camera session of a confidential nature.
13.2. Mayor Bailey?
I just have something for new business, please.
New business. 11.2 for Mayor Bailey. Anything else? Okay, if not, then motion then please for the amended agenda. Councillor Pierce, put the motion forward. A seconder, please. Member Brown, all those in favor? That's carried. Now is the time to declare any pecuniary interests. Seeing none. We have no delegations, petitions, or presentations today. In your package, meeting package, there was our meeting minutes from September 20th, 2022. Any errors or omissions? Seeing none, motion then to approve those. Mayor Bailey is put the motion forward. Seconded by Member Verhey. All those in favor? And that's carried. Any business arising from the minutes that won't be addressed anywhere else on the agenda today that you'd like to raise? Seeing none? Okay, we'll carry on then. Let's get right into the meat and potatoes of the meeting, and we've got a probably a little bit longer report than usual because we've got a couple of months here to catch up on since we haven't had a meeting for a while. So we have the September and October detachment commanders report, and we'll ask Inspector Quenville to go through that with us.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, everyone. I will go through the report for this September, October. As indicated in the staffing section, there have been a number of staffing changes that have occurred in October, none to speak of in September. Of note, we've been fortunate to gain some additional recruits and constables, and Acting Staff Sergeant Jason McTaggart, our new permanent staff sergeant, will be starting with us next Monday. I know he looks forward to meeting all of you. He comes to us with more than 27 years of policing experience from Perth County. So I look forward to having Jason be a part of our management team. And as I said, he'll meet with all of you in the very near future. We are also in the process of hiring a number of new sergeants for our detachment. So that is in progress right now and look to provide some stability in our management team. As indicated, there was one public complaint during this report and 2 year to date. The report from the Community Mobilization Officer. Of note, our MCERT worker has been busy during September and October. 9 crisis calls and 5 respectively for September and October, and she's conducted a number of follow-up visits with members of our community to provide additional mental health support. There's been platoon presentations that are tied to the grant to support domestic violence in our community and the victims and survivors of that. So a number of platoon presentations to provide education in relation to cultural diversity and barriers. The transitional support worker has been a part of those presentations. And again, she was part of the grant to hire her to provide support in the community. And officers, as you'll see there, are engaging with the transitional support worker and providing her referrals to those in the community that require additional support. November 22nd, we hosted the human trafficking presentation where more than 40 members of our community attended, and the Ontario Provincial Police Human Trafficking Unit provided a presentation there to a very diverse crowd from the community that benefited from their experience. So year to date, 245 mental health calls in Brant County. On to the School and Resource Officer report. The Grand Area School Board has initiated discussions with stakeholders in their review. The school program still remains paused, and hopeful to see the discussions progress quickly while that program is on pause. As a result, the School Resource Officer continues to liaise with the separate school board schools, but has returned to frontline to support calls for service. Of note for the Community Services Media Officer, I think it's safe to say that Constable Vitalis has been engaged in a number of community events over the last couple months, and I'm sure many of you have seen him at the various fairs and festivals throughout the county. So he has been busy engaged with our communities there. In terms of additional community engagement, I just want to draw your attention to the focus patrols spoken first from October 3rd to 31st. I think it's worth noting the number of hours and related charges for a very short time period. And I think it's also noteworthy that this data and the reason for the officers being engaged in these focus patrols was because of the information provided by Safe Streets. So that data identified high-risk areas based on their analysis and their information and community input. So you can see there's been an opportunity to take enforcement action, and certainly the officers had a clearer understanding based on the data provided by Safe Streets. So I think it's a good demonstration of the collaboration between the OPP and the Safe Streets program to provide enforcement where it's needed and continues focus patrol. So we're going to continue to rely on the stats provided by Safe Streets to create additional focus patrols. Your traffic enforcement unit has just over 2,600 charges since the inception of the unit in July of 2021, and we're just under 2,000 year to date for 2022. So certainly having a lot of contact within the community, and that's just part one charges. So a lot of contact in the community with our motoring public. Crime Stoppers remains, the stats remain low for our OPP office in terms of the number of tips we're getting. I'm engaged with the Crime Stoppers liaison officer to look at how we can improve that relationship. In terms of noteworthy events, there's a lot to speak of. I'm not going to go through all of them, but perhaps just draw your attention to a few of note. As you would know in the news, Brant OPP are currently investigating a homicide. With that comes a lot of additional resources from throughout the OPP. They're all at Brant Detachment every day while this investigation is ongoing. So these are officers in addition to the complement that the county has on a day-to-day basis. So our criminal investigation branch has taken over that investigation and providing oversight and direction. So a number of detectives that are here on a regular basis, as well as additional resources. The noteworthy events, I think, demonstrate a lot of the great proactive work that is being done by our Brant officers. Of note, on October 4th, we did unfortunately have another fatal motor vehicle collision involving a pedestrian. That driver was arrested and charged in relation to impaired driving. And also along that note, I wanted to share that it is festive ride season, as I'm sure you all saw in the media. We have a festive ride grant that allows officers to provide additional ride events than what we normally would throughout the year. The ride grants are based on the data that we were able to provide, and I just wanted to briefly share some of that with you. Data from 2017 to 2021, there were 382 impaired occurrences reported in Brant County. 15% of those occurrences listed the drivers impaired by drug, and the remaining 85 impaired by alcohol. So certainly a significant number. I know it's over that 4-year period, but still I think one is too many in that case. So certainly reflective of the prevalence of impaired driving that is still going on, and certainly the highest number of occurrences are occurring on a Saturday. So just wanted to share that brief data. On October 17th, we participated in a commercial motor vehicle blitz. I share that so that you know that we're continuing to focus on the commercial motor vehicle traffic that's traveling our roadways. That was a partnership with the Highway Safety Division, MTO, and Halton Regional Police. Resulted in 28 inspections being conducted, 26 offense notices, and 13 vehicles taken out of service. That's the number I often focus on because, I mean, that's pretty darn close to 50% of those vehicles being taken out of service when you consider they were traveling down our roadways. So officers continue to remain engaged in commercial motor vehicle enforcement, and we'll continue to see blitzes going on throughout the county. We are continuing to work on our pedestrian fatal fail to remain from earlier this summer. The investigation is still very active on that, and we hope to be able to have some resolution for the family. Moving on to the trends and actions for September and October. The ICON data, the Integrated Court Offenses Network, reports an increase of over 15% in total charges for July and August. So remember, this data is 3 months previous because of the time it takes to collect, compared to the same period over 2021. Speeding charges remain up with over 67 and 55% respectively for that time period compared to the 2021 data, and with all the big four charges showing a decrease in just over a third. Violent crime for the period of September and October is down just over 25% compared to September and October of 2021, and remains down year to date. Property crime also shows a decrease of just under 20% for September and October, and increased year to date by just over 12%. Drug crime also shows an increase in September, October, but remains below 2021 levels. In relation to motor vehicle collisions, there were no roadway fatalities in September. There was in October, sorry, I already reported on that. And our personal injury collisions show an increase of 1% year to date. Still seeing an increase in property damage collisions of just over a quarter, or just 25%, and overall a 27.6% increase for motor vehicle collisions year to date. Overall, vehicle-related property crime continues to show an increase, as we've discussed the last few meetings. Although slightly down from the last reporting period, September saw a decrease of 44% in the recovered stolen vehicles. There was a decrease in recoveries for October as well. Theft from motor vehicles was down for both September and October, 35% and 29% respectively. And an overall increase of stolen vehicles year to date compared to 2021, certainly reflective of the past number of months where it continued to be a pressure within the county. Mental health calls showed an increase in both September and October. Year-to-date data for calls involving mental health are increased by just over 3.5% compared to 2021. 911 calls were up for both September and October, but remain below the 2021 levels. Alarm calls showed no change and a decrease for October, and year-to-date, a decrease for October, and year-to-date 36.2% increase compared to 2021. Domestic disturbance calls decreased in the month of September from last September, and were up by 57% for October. Year-to-date, our domestic incidents show no change from 2021. And Madam Chair, that's the report.
Thank you very much. We'll open up the floor for some discussion. Any questions, comments? I'll perhaps maybe just warm up the discussion. I just wanted to pass on, and I've already passed this on to Inspector Quenneville, but in St. George at the end of October, beginning of November, there seemed to be a little run of impaired driving issues, and I've had some feedback from different residents about how great the OPP officers were in their quick response time, but also in dealing with the different incidents. And surprisingly, I guess, or unsurprisingly, unfortunately, many of these involved impaired driving during the day. They weren't even evening issues. And so it is a real issue in the county. Festive ride program, we know, does both evening and daytime patrols and whatnot. But yeah, it seemed to have a little bit of a run here in St. George, and I know it happens in the rest of the county as well. So it's nice to know that there's a quick response time. And one of the issues, the OPP officers happened to be doing foot patrol in St. George and were able to quickly respond to the one issue. Anyways, just wanted to pass that along, that daytime issues are happening just as much as nighttime issues with the impaired driving. Any other questions or comments or clarification? I'm looking at my good friend, Councillor Pierce, because I'm positive there's going to be something there.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Through you to the Inspector. Few things here. I'll do the easy ones off the hop. When it comes to the school and or Youth and School Resource Officer report, can you just remind us again when it says other youth engagements and it says positive ticketing? I know we've been over this before, and I think it's a great thing, but I'm wondering if you could just touch on that a little bit as to what does that mean and what do the officers do?
Through you, Madam Chair. So that is a program that the school resource officer engages with youth in the community, where they find them either wearing their bicycle helmet, obeying the rules of the road, or engaging in positive community behavior, to acknowledge that police aren't always engaged with the youth in a negative connotation, that there's reinforcement for the positive contributions that they're making, and it's an opportunity to initiate a discussion with the youth in the community and just start to create relationships.
Thank you for that. And you made a segue into exactly where I was going, so that's perfect. The words you used, if I could quote you, positive community engagement by the school resource officer, I think is what you said. That's going to lead me into the next little part of the responses from our letters to the Grand Erie District School Board. As far as I'm concerned, they're terrible. The responses to me, again, just my opinion, the responses to me from the school board mean nothing. All they're simply saying is, yep, we made the decision to stop it because we're reviewing it. That's great that they want to review this thing. I think everything should be reviewed on a, every few years or whatever, just to make sure that there's no tweaks or anything we can do to make it better. But the word I'm going to use is appalled. I'm appalled that they actually stopped this in order to do that review. It just, to me, and again, I appreciate the letters we sent in. I thought the letters we sent in were very good. They were straight and to the point, and the review and the responses we got back, as far as I'm concerned, were weak at best. So I just wanted to kind of make that segue into that other. And I know the school resource officers, they want to be in there. And again, part of the reason to be in there is the positive community engagement with the kids. So it's a tough one. I don't need a response from that. I just wanted to say my piece on that part of it. But I thank the officers for the positive ticketing, because as I say, we have spoken of that in the past, and it's a great thing to get involved. And it's one of those things that the officers are involved in a good situation. It's not always somebody's in trouble. It's actually the opposite. Somebody's doing something good. So I appreciate them doing that.
Councillor Pierce, just before you move off of that, we do have that on the agenda under 10.7. So if there's anything further we need to discuss, we can also bring it up at that point.
Yep, I just I used that little segue.
Yes, I just didn't want us to detract with, not detract, but I'm sure there's lots of conversation that all the members want to have on that program. So just wanted to make sure that we covered it.
I appreciate that. And then a little bit further on in the report, when it talks about Part 1 charges, Part 2 charges, Part 3 charges, can you just give us a quick little summary again, just for those that are listening? What is a Part 1 charge? What is a Part 2 charge? How can you just quickly go over that?
Through you, Madam Chair. So a Part 1 charge is a provincial offense notice, a ticket that's issued roadside. So that's your Part 1 charge. So it might be for speeding, it might be for no seatbelt, it might be Compulsory Automobile Insurance Act. So it's a ticket that's issued roadside. Part 3 is going to compel someone to go to court. So it's oftentimes the more serious charges, whether it's a suspended drive, a careless driving caused death, caused bodily harm. There's a variety of more serious charges that lead someone to going to court.
Okay, thank you for that. If I may, Madam Chair, just a couple more quick ones. Again, with the Part 1 charges, to your point there, they're at the time, which I'm assuming that the majority of those are speeding, that type of thing, and seatbelts, which is a good thing. If we move on to the noteworthy events, and I know you kind of spoke a bit about the stats. You were saying 382 impaireds from 2017 to 21. If you look through our noteworthy events, it's kind of disappointing, because I thought we were getting a little bit better on the impaireds, but now it's impaired, and speeding, and then B&E. And some of the speeding charges are just, it's crazy how fast people are driving in residential areas. Sure, there was the one on the 403, that's wrong in itself, but the ones that really hit home are the one, for example, there was somebody caught doing 106 and a 60. Like, that's just it's crazy to think that people are driving that fast in these residential areas. But again, we're catching a lot of them, which is a good thing. Then I'm just gonna touch briefly, and it's my old, not my old go-to, because I don't want to go to it, but if we're looking at patrol hours again, if we look at the overall patrol hours we'll compare September, October of 2022 to September, October of 2021, we're down about 70 hours. Again, when people see those stats and they see that they're down like that, that's all they focus on. If there's something that we can kind of elaborate on to potentially, we're down 70 hours because of ABC, anything like that, I think that information would be good for people to have. Because as I say, when they look at it, all they're focusing on is it was down. And even when you get into the detailed patrol hours through the different areas, north, south, Paris, east, everything is showing in a negative. I think we need some sort of context to help people understand that there is rationale behind some of it to the hours being reduced. Thank you.
Through you, Madam Chair. I think it's fair to say there's always a risk of data integrity issues. That would be my first response to that, because this information is pulled from the daily activity reports that individual officers complete at the end of their tour of duty. The other portion of that in conversation, now that COVID restrictions have lifted, there's a lot of training resuming. That has been on hold for the last number of years. That has taken a lot of officers that have to meet prerequisites or an ongoing certification in various things. And the number of junior officers that we have at our detachment has also impacted that, with officers being paired up. But training seems to be one of the biggest pressures in that regard, that resuming training, in-person training, has taken people away from detachment. And that anecdotally right now, without drilling down to every single one, is certainly a pressure that has been created.
Okay, I appreciate that. As I say, we could just, if it's possible to even put that type of verbiage in there, just to let people know that it's not a fact of the patrols just aren't happening. The patrols are down because, as you say, with the education and stuff like that, I think that would be great. And that's all I have, Madam Chair. Thank you.
So just to follow up on that, Councillor Pierce, the thought then is having that context, because this does get forwarded to council. It's available on the website. It provides anybody that would read that isn't necessarily watching the meeting and hearing the conversation. It provides that context for them so that's not misinterpreted.
Absolutely. And if I'm, excuse me, if I may, Madam Chair, I get at least a call or two every month when we have the police services report. It's the same couple of people calling in, but what they're saying is not incorrect. All they're saying is, looks like patrol's down again, looks like patrol's down again. So that's the feedback that I'm getting. And it's just, as I say, I think that would go a long way to just explaining some of the rationale behind it.
For sure.
That's all.
Good
Thank you.
feedback. Yeah, and just to add to that, I know Inspector Quenville and I have talked about how much the county, the communities in our county, and the people really value the presence and visibility of the police and the foot patrols and being visible in our communities. And I know that's a priority that Inspector Quenville's also got in her what's the right word, priorities as well, I guess, with her folks. So we all want to see that. We all appreciate that. It's just how do we fit it all into logistics of everything too.
Yep. Thank you.
Go ahead. Yep. Inspector Quenville.
Madam Chair, sorry, I forgot to mention that as we head into 2023, and Councillor Pierce's comment about information from the constituents reminds me that we're heading into the consultation phase of our next action plan for the detachment. So certainly opportunities to hear that kind of feedback from the community, the board, council, as we develop action plan for 2022 to 2025. I know you and I talked briefly about it would be coming soon, but certainly the first quarter of 2023 is a consultation phase. So some of that feedback and input will help us set the detachment priorities as well. So thank you for reminding me of that in your comments, but so that's something for further discussion.
Perfect. Any other questions or comments on the detachment commander's report at this time? None? Okay. We will, better change my agenda. The false alarms is 9.2 in your agenda package. As Inspector Quenville mentioned, they continue to stay up, and even though there's a fine system in place, it doesn't seem to deter some folks. And there's an addendum to the package as well. Nancy pointed out to me, thank you very much, Nancy, which has an updated number for the false alarm reports to November. So I guess at this time we need a motion to accept both of those, the detachment commander's report and the false alarms report. Councillor Pierce?
Yeah.
Question or?
Yeah, I'll move it to get on the floor first.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Pierce moved it. Member Verhey, you'll second that? Thank you. Discussion?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, just very quickly about the false alarm report. Is there any way that, and we don't have to have it today, but is there any way that for next meeting we can get comparison as to what the numbers were for, unless I totally missed it,
No, I agree.
for 2021 and then 2020, just to see kind of how we're doing? Just and I know because it was a few years ago that we brought in the fines and stuff like that to see if that's making a difference.
That's a great suggestion.
Thank you.
Nancy's got that noted. And I'm sure Heather's got it noted, so that's great. Any other discussion then on the motion? Okay. All those in favor of receiving both? Thank you. Carried. Okay, section 10 is our communications. The first item in your package, 10.1, is the information from OPP Financial Services regarding the detachment revenues that are forwarded back as a credit to the county for work that they've performed. So security checks, reports, fingerprints, that totaled $14,417.87 for the period of July to September 2022. So that gets received by the county, and it's a credit against I guess, the OPP billing statement. So that's one piece for information. Any questions or discussions on that? Okay, 10.2 is the 2023 annual billing statement package and the reconciliation for 2021. As you know, or you remember, the billing statements are based on previous year's numbers and statistics, and then they reconcile back, and a bunch of credits and debits going back and forth and whatnot. But this is the package that would indicate the cost to the county for the OPP services for the upcoming. And I believe there's some information sessions. Oh, that's next in the agenda. So this is receiving for information at this time. Obviously, the county will have gone through this as well. And there is some seminars, 10.3, which isn't here, but there were some seminars for information, webinars, if anybody's interested. I've attended a couple of them in the past, and it's pretty good to explain like how they base some of the statement based on calls for service and how that gets put into the model and how that works based on our own county data, if you have time. One's today, I think, yes. And I think another one's next week. Yeah. 10.4, I don't have a 10.3, but that 10.3 was the webinars that we talked about, and Nancy's also emailed it out to everybody as well. 10.4 is the email that OAPSB sent out to thank the previous executive director, Fred Kosonen, and acknowledging his contributions to the organization, which, having met him personally, he's a man of a lot of integrity and knowledge, and I know he did a lot for the organization, and he's a good catch for the Halton Police Services Board to be able to have that role for him. But I think this is just acknowledging Fred's contributions. There's no action required from us at this time. 10.5 was emailed out to everybody as well. It was a call for nominations to the OMERS Administration Corporation Board on behalf of the Ontario Association of Police Services. OMERS is, for those of you that don't know, is the Municipal Employee Retirement Pension Fund. So the municipal police services, their staff would be part of OMERS. Our OPP staff are not part of OMERS. They're their own, like they're part of OPSU. I don't know.
Ontario Pension Board.
There you go. So it's, I guess, in my mind, that's just a piece of information. I don't know that there's anybody here that would want to do that at this time. 10.6, I don't believe this was emailed out. It may have been, but I don't believe so. But it's a call to fill out a survey that does impact us in terms of they're looking for feedback on OPP detachment board members. I don't know the specific questions myself, but if we can take a look at it, the responses are due by December 20th. I'm happy to fill out the survey if that's the will of the board. At the same time, we can also just take a look at some of the stuff and send it out to the board for your consideration, as long as we get it filled in by the 20th. So I guess looking for some direction there on that one. Okay. I was in the sunny south when this came out, so that's why I didn't see it come in the email. Is it how would you like to proceed with this? We should participate, seeing as how it does impact us as an OPP detachment board members. Would you like me to take a look with Nancy and Heather at the survey itself and send out anything to you guys by email for comment or input, or do you just want me just to go ahead and do it? How best would you like to proceed here? Councillor Pierce?
Madam Chair, I'm okay if you just do it.
Okay, that's the consensus. That's what we will do. Thank you. 10.7, we're circling on this item. Both Mayor Bailey and myself on behalf of the Police Services Board sent letters, as you know, you've all received copies of those, to the Grand Erie District School Board regarding the School Resource Officer Program. This is the responses that we received back in regards to those two letters that were sent from the Director of Education and Secretary to the Board. I did mention previously in an email that I would reply back to one of the gentlemen that we were directed to talk to, Superintendent Baker. However, that was in my in-between period where I was no longer a member after November 15th, so I thought it best to wait until I was back on board, if that was going to be the case. So I am happy to reach out to Mr. Baker to get further direction, clarification, information, timelines. I know we all have concerns about the program. I know Councillor Pierce, you'd started off talking about it, and Member Brown, I think you wanted to add to it as well.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that Councillor Pierce hit the right word. Appalling is as good as you can get. This program has been very successful for many, many years, for many decades. It provides an opportunity for the officers to create a long-term relationship with one of these kids that has long-term benefits. It gives them a point of contact. It happens when there's no stress in many instances. So you have that opportunity to build a relationship rather than waiting until there's a crisis where now there's frustration and tempers and I was shocked when I heard that it had been discontinued. The methodology of their stopping this program while they do a review of it, I think is highly questionable, and I don't understand it. The letters that were sent out and the responses, I think accountability is a word that seems to be missing from their actions and to the response specifically to the chair and to the mayor. I was at a Brantford Home Builders function last week, and parents were openly discussing this. And they asked me why this program was paused, which I had absolutely no answer for because we've never been provided with that information. They described assaults that had taken place that they feel would have been avoided if the police had been present like they have been in the past. And they were looking for answers as to why it was canceled and how much longer this will take before we get a response as to why it's been canceled and what we're going to do about it. I have not heard one person that supports the fact that it's been stopped. You know, if they needed to, as Councillor Pierce said, if they needed to tweak it or address some issues, they could have done that while the program continued. But this is from our standpoint, and I'm just wondering, with the detachment commander, if you've had any feedback that you've received concerning the program and the stopping of this program, either positive or negative, that may benefit us as the board and the mayor and the chair with our how we best approach this moving forward.
Through you, Madam Chair. I can say that not every school board in West Region has taken this course of action while a review has been undertaken. There are other detachments where the school resource officers remain in the schools. So I guess that would be the first item of note. Also, there's ongoing discussions at the detachment to address how do we continue to engage with the youth in our community in a positive way, and looking to identify solutions to that might include delivering the program still, but more in an after hours in the evening kind of venue in one of the community locations to make it still accessible. That would be part of a bigger media campaign to ensure that parents knew and were able to still engage. So that was what some other detachments in other regions have undertaken to still remain engaged with the youth, to provide an opportunity to still connect. So that's certainly something we've been discussing and trying to determine how best to action that, and ensuring that the messaging gets out to everyone that might want to bring their children and still make it accessible for everyone. That's the other challenge too. If we decide we're going to have it in the evening, that in itself could create barriers for some families. So again, trying to make it accessible for everyone and deliver the programming still that all the kids look forward to and enjoy, and create that opportunity for engagement. So. But to your point, no truer words. Like engaging in peaceful times rather than in crisis is important for all the work that we do, and this certainly creates challenges in that. So that's it.
I'll just follow up on that, Inspector Quinville, and I have had a couple of different conversations about requests that she's received from different schools in the county. Can the OPP be at our Halloween parade? Can the OPP come to this thing? And it's now up to Inspector Quinville and her team to say, sorry, no, we're not able to participate. It's not because we don't want to, but the information about the suspension hasn't reached out into the spider web of all the different schools and the parent councils and the teachers and whatnot. And so there's a lot of confusion as to why there's not resource officers available in some of these schools. So I think that's also another piece, is that they haven't communicated it well within their own system that they're not available because they've gotten requests. I was going to touch on this in my chair's remarks, but I did attend the human trafficking presentation on November 22nd that Inspector Quinville noted earlier. And several times in that presentation, people in the community asked, why is this not talked more about in school? Why is this not brought up more about how we can prevent this from happening to our youth in the school system? And it was the questions were handled well because it was not. I think PC Murphy just was able to generally say, right now we're not able to be in the schools. People didn't really understand what that meant, but the questions were still from the community about, this is a really important topic that should be talked about in school, and it's part of the healthy relationships curriculum, and there was a lot of specific things. And so I think we're missing opportunities here by having this program suspended. We're missing vital and critical opportunities to engage with the youth about these important topics, apart from the positive discussions about the positive ticketing and some of the traffic safety and bike safety and all that kind of stuff. There's some really hard topics that need to be addressed in positive ways as well, that would prevent harm to some of our youth as well in the community. So that to me was another light bulb moment as to why this suspension makes no sense. To your point, Councillor Pierce, I understand a review. I think we all appreciate a review is understandable, but a full suspension of the program, especially at a time, I think also we're seeing a lot of new residents come into the county from different communities who may not have had the same kind of relationship we're trying to develop with the youth. So this is a great opportunity to change the story with some of those residents as well. And yeah, so I think there's more that can be done here, that we need to advocate here. That's what I'm hearing from everybody here. Member Verhey?
Through you, Madam Chair, has anybody reached out to Superintendent Baker?
As I mentioned previously, I said I would, but then my term ended on November 15th until I was reappointed. So I'm happy to reach out to Mr. Baker, but I didn't feel it appropriate in my time where I was waiting to be reappointed. I shouldn't speak on behalf of the Police Service Board if the term ended, but I'm happy to reach out to him and engage him in a conversation. I'm happy to invite him to come to a Police Service Board meeting as well. If you feel that's, I don't think it should be, I think we should discuss how that works, how best that would work. But he did follow up saying that if he was open to any kind of conversation, so that would be good. Councillor Pierce?
Thanks, Madam Chair. So I wrote some notes on these ones too, just to kind of circle back to this again with the letter that was received back from them. Just a couple of little lines I'm going to pull out of the letter, and they talk about the review is deploying the current best practices through human rights and equity lens, which is fantastic. Using focus groups, surveys, and interviews. Fine, that's all part of the review. I get that, but it goes on to say that that the voices of all stakeholders and partners. This includes participation with representatives of police services in Haldimand, Norfolk, Brant County, and the city of Brantford. I would like to know, prior to us reaching out to them, had they reached out to us as a police services board to say, hey, we want your input in on this? Because I don't recall that ever happening. So again, when I read this letter, it's like, it's bogus. Like they're saying that we're going to be involved with this, but the only way we're involved is because we reached out to them.
So to my knowledge, and Nancy, please correct me if I'm wrong, but to my knowledge, there's been no official outreach to the Police Services Board in terms of that stakeholder communication piece.
That's what I thought.
They may have reached out to OPP West Region or OPP headquarters in terms of that part. I have no idea, but they have not reached out to any of to us as a Police Service Board.
Right. And that may be, but as I say, that's what I pulled from their letter, and I highlighted the fact that they're saying that we will be a participant in this, and I haven't seen that.
Inspector Cromwell, did you want to add to that?
Sure.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, we recently received a request to participate in a dialogue, so that's within the last 2 weeks. So, and Brantford Police is a part of that discussion as well. So I don't recall seeing there was Norfolk as part of that discussion as well. So that has not happened yet. They're just in the preliminary stages of trying to schedule that. So they are engaging with the impacted police services.
Okay. No, I appreciate that. And then, Madam Sheriff, I'm just going to have one more little kick at my can here, because I don't want to say too much more on this about the importance of this. And we've all talked about it. We all know it. I look at it in the sense that my son's 25 now. Back when he was in high school and Constable Ken Johnson was in the school, he was the liaison at the time. Those are relationships that were made with students, young adults at the time, that have lasted through time. And now, whether he sees them in the rink, or whether he sees them downtown, or whether he sees a lot of people everywhere, there's that friendship that was made because of this program. And I'm sure PC Murphy's doing the same thing. She's making relationships with these young adults that maybe weren't, were afraid to make a relationship with others. But because, as we said, it's on a positive note that this is all happening, it's just something I can't say enough about how I'm disappointed with this, because it has taken what has gone on for years, and to me has just set things back. So now it's gonna have to be a lot of work by PC Murphy again to build that trust, and it's all about trust. And that it was a two-way street. You know, the school resources trusted the students, and it became the point where the students now trusted the police resources and would go to them, you know, with, you know, if they had questions about anything. And that's the one thing, and I'm sure PC Murphy's the same thing, but I know when Ken was in the school, you could speak to him about anything. It didn't have to be that somebody was doing something to you or somebody was in trouble or anything like that. It was just somewhere for students to feel safe and have that conversation. And now that's been taken away, and I don't like it.
So before we get into the action items, I think Mayor Bailey wants to also make a point.
Through you, Madam Chair, I attended the amalgamation meeting of the Children's Aid Societies, Brantford, Brant, Haldeman, Norfolk, and I got to meet the new mayors. And I just happened to be seated next to the superintendent of the school board, so I gave it to him. And he's a friend of mine from Rotary, Greg Anderson, so I've known him for a very long time. And I told him that I was disappointed that they had done this. And I told him that we always thought, we took comfort in the fact that the police weren't, when you see youth and police together, it used to be there was a problem. There was something that had gone wrong. There was something, they were investigating something, they found drugs, somebody got hit. Something bad was associated with seeing a policeman or a cruiser with a couple of kids. And I said, you know, that we didn't have that in the county anymore. You saw police at everything. The police were, every time they did anything, any gay alliance, any kind of diversity training, any kind of mental health, the police were always there. They were on the same committee. In fact, they were on most of the standing committees for the high school, for mental health, for bullying, for, as I said, the gay alliance, the diversity, and now with the new diversity that's coming, the actual visual diversity that's coming in the county. And I was so glad to see that we have that same diversity in the police force with the OPP. But I said to Greg Anderson, I said, you know, now when we see police, we go right back to 10 years ago when we think, oh my gosh, what's going on up there now? Or who's in trouble, or what have they found, or whatever. I said, so, and I told him about the presence even at the flag raising with you people standing back until you were invited into the celebration of raising of the flag. There's something very wrong with that the police shouldn't be a welcome addition to any of our gatherings, any of our social gatherings, especially something that's sparked by the school. These kids, I always felt that if, and again, we use Ken Johnson because we've known him the longest and we know him the best, and I think he did a very good job. If there was a problem with someone's mental health, or someone was talking suicide, or there was some sort of depression, or anything, bullying because of their religion, we have a lot of that going on too in the county, where very religious people are being bullied for the same reason that the kids that don't know religion are being bullied. So it's on both ends of the spectrum. And I always thought that Ken was very good at calling victim services or whatever he needed to call, because he knew them all. And he had done it so well for so long that I always just felt like if any of our kids were in trouble at the high school, they were going to get help through Ken. And then through that help, they were going to be fine. I don't feel that way anymore. And I think that, as we've mentioned, to cancel a program during investigation or review is kind of silly, especially something that's had a history of success. It's not as if we've ever had any trouble at any level, at any time, with any of the people that you've placed there. You've always seemed to pick the right person, and for that, good for you. But to have it go dark or ghosted during something that's supposed to hopefully come back even bigger and better, just doesn't make any sense to me. And I said that to Greg Anderson. I said, I hope you're working on it because we really do need it back. And his remarks to me at the end of the event, because I sort of embarrassed him a little bit, but only with facts, and I didn't sort of step out of line. I was very calm. But he said, well, I got you a flagpole, didn't I? And I said, you know what? Thanks for the flagpole. I asked for a second flagpole at the high school, and I got it. And it took 3 years, but that doesn't matter either. I have one. But a flagpole isn't the same as counseling or a person that's monitoring the feelings and the situations at our high school. So I'm not sure whether because he said that so quickly to me that I got something, so I should be satisfied. But it was a very dismissive answer. at a function, which again is all about kids at the Children's Aid and coming together and doing the right thing for the right reasons. So I'm very disappointed too, Madam Chair. And then when I saw your letter and my letter being so different when they were written, and then I see the response coming, they're exactly the same. Even the signature is the same. It's not even hand signed. So that leads me to believe, I have no proof of this, but I would suggest that this letter, the same letter that was sent to you and I, was sent to a whole lot of other people. So I'm thinking that a lot of people aren't really happy with the process. So maybe there's some hope in the fact that we have a letter that seems to have gotten sent to a lot of different people. So I'm very disappointed as the mayor, and I know that my council would be just as disappointed because we were very happy with the way it was before. Thank you.
So just before we go to Member Brown, I think we all agree that there's tangible programs that are done through the school resource officer, and then there's the intangible, the relationships, the connections, and those are two really key things, right? That we need to impress upon. And I agree with you, Mayor Bailey, about suspending a program that is under review makes no sense to any of us. I think that's the key talking point right there is suspending a program while you're reviewing it. You can still review it and have it ongoing and then make changes to it later on. That would have been the best course of action, right? Carry on. So Member Brown, I'll go to you, and then I have some action items that I've written down that I'll share with you, and then we can wrap up there.
Thanks, Madam Chair, and thanks, Inspector Quimble, for your input, because I was not aware that not all school boards had canceled. So that really causes me even more concern now that we have somebody local who is being unaccountable, and it's not an across the board issue. We're being focused on here, and I think that we're due answers as to why. And I've never heard a problem with I've heard nothing but positive from this program. So I don't understand why it has been dealt with in the manner that it has been. Having said that, when was this program canceled? How long ago?
Through you, Madam Chair, I would have to research the exact date. I arrived in June, and I believe that it was already on pause, but I'm not sure for how long into the previous school year.
Not much. I think it was the spring. It was just before you arrived.
So my point is that we've been canceled for a considerable length of time, and 2 weeks ago is the first time that they've reached out to anybody that we're aware of within this scope. I think that the letter that I wrote to you back concerning this, 3rd of November, they put in a whole lot of fancy words to describe how they're doing in consulting and everything that that they want this to sound nice. To me, the main word that's missing is timely. If they had to cancel this program, it should have been all hands on deck. Here's the problem. And within 30 days, they should have had a response on something that they're impacting to this level. And I can speak from personal experience going back decades where you build a relationship. The majority of kids out there are good kids. There's very few of them that cause the majority of the problems. And I had in my service kids come up to me that had met me before and basically said, "Can we talk?" They wanted somebody to talk to. They wanted to know that they could trust that it wasn't going to come back on them. And we solved a lot of criminal activity. $100,000 break-in, one specific example, came from a person that I had met in high school. We're missing those opportunities. You don't get a second chance to rebuild those relationships. And I think that there has to be, from all angles, some pressure has to be put on them to deal with this in a timely manner.
So just to follow up, Member Brown, just to clarify this, Grand Erie, the Brant Haldeman Norfolk Catholic District School Board the program still is ongoing. It's the public school system, the Grand Erie School Board. So within the county, that if anybody goes to a separate school, they still participate in the school resource officer programming. So Catholic board does, public board doesn't. However, on West Region social media, I'm sure all of you follow that as religiously as I do, you see all the time some great posts from other detachments about the work the school resource officers are doing in their communities. And right now we have a vacuum because we can't post anything with some of with the majority of our students being in the public school system. So it is a challenge for us to even advocate some of that on the social media point of view as well. Councillor Pierce, you wanted to add?
Member Brown just hit on it, the fact that, it should be duly noted somewhere with an explanation as to, not all school boards have done this. So why did Grand Erie District School Board choose to go this route when other school boards have not?
So I'm hearing that that you would like me to follow up with Mr. Baker, Superintendent Baker, with some very specific and pointed questions about the timeliness, the rationale, the suspension, next steps, timelines, that type of thing. And then I think we discussed potentially inviting someone to come to a future police service board meeting as well from the school board to talk about the issue. Is that correct? Is there anything else you'd like done at this time? Member Brown?
I just have one more comment, Madam Chair. To Inspector Quinville, do you know if the OPP has engaged with them in any respect, like headquarters or anyone other than yourself, as to why or what the concerns are or what the expectations are?
Through you, Madam Chair. I don't know if they've done it at the corporate level. I know that the OPP is undertaking their own review through the use of a university, but the programming remains ongoing, and they'll evaluate the outcome of that research. But I would have to double check for you, sir.
Okay, so is it the will of the group here then that we'll have our first steps be that I'll contact Superintendent Baker for further discussion and get some answers to some of the questions we've been raising here, and then from there we can decide next steps, whether to formally invite somebody, send another letter, or engage in some other manner. Inspector Quinville will keep us up to date in terms of any kind of next steps that they have with the outreach that they have with the school board, now that the school board's contacted them. Is there anything else then that you want on the action item list at this time? Okay. Is that good? It's a very important topic. I think that we all agree on in terms of next steps and try to get this rectified. Okay, sorry, Mayor Bailey?
Motion to receive communications.
We have two more to go, I think, right? Or do we do this now?
We can do them.
Okay. The other ones are specific. Thank you, Mayor Bailey. So motion from Mayor Bailey to receive the communications then, items 10.1 to 10.7. Seconder for that, Member Brown. All in favor? And that's carried. So 10.8 is a specific report that has been prepared by Nancy. Everybody's probably reviewed it in terms of the proposed meeting calendar. Nancy, is there anything that you wanted to review specifically, or?
No.
Okay. There's a suggestion here that I guess April, some of the council members, Councillor Pierce and Mayor Bailey, may want to attend the Good Roads Conference, which would conflict with our third Tuesday. So the proposal would be to move it back a week, which I think is just after Easter, right? So that would be the one proposal, and then the December meeting will as we get closer to that, we can decide what best to do there given the holiday schedule. So there's two changes right now on page 2 or page 70, but page 2 of the memo, you'll see the full calendar there for 2023. Any issues? And then it's noted here, the spring conference for the Ontario Association of Police Services Board is May 30th to June 1st, which doesn't conflict with our schedule either. So if this is good with everybody, we'll need a motion to approve as presented.
So moved.
Councillor Pierce, Member Brown seconded it. Oh my goodness. All those in favor? Great, so we can get these in the calendar now. 10.9, Heather has prepared a memo on the draft budget. I don't know, Heather, did you want to run through it with everybody, or?
The budget's pretty straightforward. I'm not recommending that we make any significant changes. We do still have some money unspent in 2022, but a lot of that is because the new legislation hasn't come through. So a lot of the money we planned on spending on training and getting that up and running hasn't been spent this year. So unless there's any changes that the board would like, I would suggest that we would submit this through for county deliberation.
I'm not sure what line item, Heather, but if we were to do 2 of the dispatch newsletters, spring and fall, is that public relations?
Yeah, and looking at what we spent this year, we have enough in there to do 2.
Okay,
already.
perfect. And then you also note, Heather included in here the piece about the proceeds from property sale and the money that comes to the police service board. That now will be held in reserve for use by the police service board. So we'll carry that amount over to 2023 and then moving forward. And then we can work with Inspector Quenville to kind of action item anything specific that and some parameters around that in terms of what might be helpful for the detachment or for the work that we're doing here at the police service board. So this way we don't lose it in the calendar year either. So that's good news. That's great news. Councillor Pierce?
Thanks, Madam Chair. The only one that kind of jumped out at me there was the membership and subscriptions. The actuals for 2022 appear to be way up. And then we just kept the budget the same as it was, the proposed budget the same as it was in 2022. Is that going to be over allocated again? I'm just curious as to kind of what would fall into that category.
I know Heather's looking that up for us.
Yeah, so I would recommend if we are making a change that it be to that line. I suspect that that's related to the number of officers we have. ROA PSP memberships are based on the number of officers, and I think that's gone up over the past few years. We were right on the line for a bunch of years, so we probably ticked up into the next section. So, I mean, I would suspect it'll be close to where it was this year. Probably we're looking at another $1,000 into that.
So Councillor Pierce, we should amend the request then for that line item to increase it?
I would think so, Madam Chair, yeah. Everything else looks to be kind of on.
Any other questions or discussion or requests within the budget? Okay, so seeing none, we'll need a motion then to approve the police service 2023 budget request as amended with Councillor Pierce's suggestion of the $1,000 for the membership line item to $2,650. So that would be $39,932 would be the total budget then. Is there a mover for that? Councillor Pierce, thank you. Seconded by Member Verhey. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you, Heather, for putting that together for us. Okay, so then we get into other business. Item number 11. I just wanted to raise quickly with the group. It is December, and as we've done in the past, we've had an opportunity to provide some type of token level of appreciation to our detachment staff, civilian and OPP members to recognize the holiday season. It's been well received. I know the couple of ride-alongs that I've done or the different interactions I've had with the different officers, they've really appreciated that little boost, that little expression of thanks. And I think that kind of stuff goes a long way in that relationship building. So I'd like to propose again, and if approved, we would work with Inspector Quenville to figure out the total number of people that would include. But I believe last year we put a limit of $1,000, and I don't think we came anywhere close to that. But I think we had $1,000 in the maximum budget to allow us to procure, I think it was, we bought I know for a fact we bought chocolate from a local County of Brant business, and then it was distributed to each of the members and staff. So I'd like to propose that for consideration again, once again this year. Any discussion on that?
Great idea.
Can I make a motion? I can't make a motion. Yeah, I can't make a motion.
I'd like to make that motion that we follow through as we have in the past years for a donation, or not for a donation, for a gift to be made to each one of the personnel at the detachment.
For the $1,000, Member Brown?
Up to the maximum of $1,000.
Seconder for that motion? Member Verhey? Any other discussion? I'm happy to take the lead again, once again, to procure and distribute with Inspector Quenneville's help. Any other discussion? If not, we'll call the question. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Okay, moving into 12, we have, oh, sorry, Mayor Bailey, my apologies. 11.2, Mayor Bailey.
Through you, Madam Chair, I was just wondering about the Snow Buddies program. Again, this is a matching up of young people, male and female, to partner up with elderly people in the County of Brant for snow shoveling. And again, I know at one time Ken Johnson used to do it through the school. I don't know whether it can be used as volunteer hours. I don't know what we're going to do this year. I don't know whether we have any contact. I can maybe, if you want me to, I can. I think it's something that I brought to police services just because it becomes a police services issue very quickly when the snow falls and people can't cross their road and get out of their house and stuff like that for appointments. So I'd rather have the system put into place now before the snow. And I don't know, maybe looking for some direction from this board as to how I'm going to find young people to partner up with people that are going to be in need of shoveling driveways.
This would be for the seniors and whatnot that are looking for the help to when the snow.
I think staff might have.
Heather?
I believe this program is administered through our bylaw enforcement group. I can get them in touch with you, Mayor Bailey, on what their efforts are and what we can do to support that.
Perfect. And is there any way we can put out an hand to this school to get the senior kids to?
I'm sure they have been reaching out, but I'll follow up with Amanda and I'll get her to touch base with you on exactly what they're doing and what other stuff we can do to get more.
Perfect. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, then we'll move on to item 12. Councillor Pierce, any updates or communications from council on any of our policing related items?
A couple things, if I could, Madam Chair. So I had a letter put forth by a fellow council member in regards to a constituent that reached through to him. If you'll oblige me, it's just a short little blurb here. I'd like to just read it here. It said, I had a reason the other day to report an issue to the OPP at their office. It was about a scam letter that she received and thought the police should be made aware of it. I thought I'd phone the office to report it, but with a totally automated system, I was unable to actually speak to a person. The automated service was for crime in process, accident reports, or to report a scam or fraud, which automatically transferred me to the Canadian Anti-Fraud Service in Ottawa, where I waited for about an hour on phone, and there was no other options to talk to a local police service. I thought if I pressed 0 that it might put an option to put me through to the operator at our local detachment, but that was not the case. Is there a number that I can call as a citizen to report non-serious action items that I want and need the police to follow up on?
I'll ask Inspector Quenneville about that one.
Through you, Madam Chair, 1-888-310-1122.
And that's to our detachment?
No, that's to the Provincial Communication Center.
I think, Councillor Pierce, from what I understand, and Inspector Quenneville, please step in and correct me where I go wrong here, but it's important that that number be used, because everything has to get like cataloged and tracked and numbers identified. If it goes in just to the detachment, it doesn't get tracked the same way, is my understanding, and I've probably not given the due credit to that whole process.
So that's the Provincial Communications Center. So calling into the detachment, not necessarily is there going to be an officer available to take that call. So when it goes through the Provincial Communications Center, they can dispatch an officer to be in contact with the complainant to ensure they get the information they need. So that's the way we account for our occurrences and dispatch officers appropriately. But there may not even be an officer sitting in the detachment at the time the person calls, if that makes sense, right? They could be all out and about on the road at calls in their patrol. So calling the detachment is not the most efficient way to get an officer to respond to a call for service.
If I could, thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate that, and I will definitely get this information back. But what I got from the letter here was the fact that they wanted to report it to police, not necessarily have somebody come out to them. So is there like I think the gist that I was getting from this is they were trying to to press zero to get to somebody at our station.
Yeah, and that's fair, and that's the conversation they have with call taking and dispatching, is they don't need to see someone, they just need a phone conversation. And we get those calls all the time too, that people like in exactly this circumstance wants to just report an event, and they don't need an officer to come to their door, they just want to have a conversation. So, but that's still the best and most efficient way to do it.
Okay, I'll absolutely put that on. Thank you for that. And one other thing that I have, Madam Chair, is I'm sure some of you or all of you are aware that we've got a report that's come to council in regards to Mile Hill, potentially of putting it one way up. Mile Hill is used by officers when they're trying to, get to the scene of something. There's been, many times, because I live right at the bottom of the hill, that I've seen them, coming down the hill, sirens, lights, the whole deal. So obviously they're going somewhere, which is well, good and not good, I guess. And they're using that as, I'm assuming, as the shortest distance to get to where they're going. Part of the rationale for the report on the Mile Hill is the fact that it's not the best hill. It's not really, it's not a standard 66-foot road. There's pedestrians on it. It's tough to go both ways. I did have somebody stop at my house, and they were actually going up the hill when an officer was coming down the hill, and then there was another officer coming down the hill, and they said it scared the you-know-what out of them, because they were just, I call it the Peabody Bend, when they were going around the bend, and then all of a sudden there was a police cruiser coming the other way with lights and sirens. I'm trying to fast forward here that if in fact that report is approved by council and that road is made one way up, the alternative, I guess, would have to be for them to continue down Rest Acres Road and down through town. I'm curious if we can make that suggestion for them to do that now. And don't get me wrong, I appreciate the fact that, in some instances, every second counts for an officer attending a scene. But is it something that we can potentially discuss with them, in the fact that it may be safer option to use Rest Acres and down King Edward to where they're going? Because if they come down the Mile Hill, again, that's not the best hill, and then they're going up Washington Street, which is a residential area, and that type of thing. So I was just asked to bring that forth.
And we talked about that about 6 months ago, because there was a constituent complaint about high speeds and whatnot on that road, and I think we deferred it, waiting to hear back whether county was going to. There was some talk about the fire services and whatnot, and so I think this is where we're at now. Is the proposal is that it'll be a one-way going up, I guess.
That is the proposal that's come to council, correct.
So you're suggesting that maybe we start sooner rather than later to use other pathways?
That's kind of where I'm going. And again, I don't know if this is going to be passed by council or not passed by council. The public seems kind of split 50-50. Some love it, some hate it. But again, if in fact that is what is approved by council, we need to start thinking about that now and potentially do another road.
I mean, we all know that road is not designed for the purposes it's being used for today. right? I mean, I've traveled that road as well, and it's either a drag strip or it's a, and at night it's very, you can't see pedestrians walking because there's no sidewalks, there's no street lights the same way. There needs to be something done for sure. I'm happy to hear that.
I've been at the bottom of that hill for 30 years. I've definitely noticed a difference. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, so again, I'm just want to pass that information on,
Okay.
just to kind of make them aware. Again, keeping in mind that I do appreciate the fact that in some situations, every second counts, so.
If I could maybe ask you a question, Councillor Pierce, in terms of council back and forth. I had a question about bylaw enforcement. And I guess, the work that we do around this table is to make sure that our OPP is where they need to be with the resources they need to be to, bring a standard of safety to the community. And in my community, I don't really see a bylaw officer too often. And that's part of the safety and enforcement piece. So if we're going to let people off on municipal bylaw type things, parking in no parking zones or parking with their tires the wrong way on the curb or you name it, if that disrespect for the law is going to start at that municipal level, we're going to have a challenge at the policing level. So I think some of those strategies need to go hand in hand. And I don't know how best to. I don't know how that works. Obviously, that's something that county deals with, but just wondering if that's something that's ever been talked about in terms of that piece.
There's been some discussion around bylaw, and with bylaw, my understanding of it is the fact that depending on what you're talking about, if you're talking about parking and that sort of thing, then a bylaw officer can, they can initiate, if you want to look at it that way, a parking ticket or whatever it is. But depending on what the situation is, like let's just say that somebody's got a C-can and they're on their property and nobody says anything about it, then bylaw won't take. I shouldn't say won't take the initiative because that's going to come out wrong. Those types of things are complaint driven.
Right.
So if somebody files a complaint about it, then bylaw will have to follow up with it. But I would suggest just a quick conversation with Greg Bergeron in regards to the presence of bylaw in St. George. That would be kind of.
And I don't know if other communities as well. I guess where I got to thinking was if we're expecting people to, like whether it's traffic, follow the speed limits, respect the law, respect starts with those as well, right? Sure. And if we're gonna, for example, there's a no parking sign in front of the post office in St. George that nobody adheres to, right, wrong, or indifferent. But if we're going to allow that disrespect, then how do we expect them to respect the other laws that we have? And so how, it all kind of blends into the other in a law enforcement scheme. And I just wasn't sure if there's an overall strategy that is part of how the two work together, like police services and bylaw enforcement.
Through you, Madam Chair, I would also, we spoke about potentially getting somebody in from Grand Ridge. I'm sure Greg would come in and join us at one of our meetings to discuss exactly that.
I don't want to cause any, just thinking out loud that, the disrespect that we've talked about from people, if we're trying to train good behavior, then it's a double-edged, a pronged approach, right? So maybe I saw your hand up there.
Not a good time to be trying to teach good behavior. It's a very angry world, a very loud, very fast, angry world right now. But it is, I was going to say the same thing as Councillor Pierce. It is complaint driven. So no matter what's going on, if nobody complains about it, it just sits there. It's different on some of the streets in St. George, like Reed Street, where people park and block driveways every single day of the week. They call every single day of the week. People come get ticketed every day of the week. And they probably don't pay their tickets. So someday that will all catch up with them. It is complaint driven. So if you wanted, and that example you gave at the post office is very good because it just happened. And people run in, including me, we run in, pick up our mail, and run out and leave. But we're not supposed to do that anymore. So if you had bylaw sitting across the street or standing behind the post office and got them, they would be all fined. But someone needs to do that, and bylaw will be there. Bylaws in St. George a lot, but usually just for one purpose. They serve their purpose and they leave again.
Yep, just wanted to raise that if there was ever an opportunity at council to talk about that kind of proactive approach, that it kind of goes hand in hand with what we're trying to achieve here as well. So just thought I'd raise it. Nothing, no action item necessarily. Anything else for Councillor Pierce? Anything? No news on photo radar or any of those fun topics.
If we had our way, we would have it tomorrow, but there's, as I said before, as we started peeling back that onion, there's more and more and more layers. It's definitely something we still want to do. It's definitely something as the new council that we want to do, and we're not putting it on the back burner as yet. But there's a lot more to it than we ever thought there was going to be. And there's word out there now that the city of Brantford is looking to potentially do kind of what we were looking at as well. So that may be a match that the mayor can add to that with his conversations.
And City of Brantford, I understand, is also putting in red light cameras in the new year as well.
I've heard that.
Yeah. Sorry, Mayor Bailey.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, I am meeting with Mayor Davis. We do have a mayor's task force setting up for all of that, so it's going to be coming very shortly. We're going to try to tag on to that.
Great.
They're just about finished the process.
I understand the administrative side of it is the bottleneck, I suppose, on the other side. Yeah. Any plans for red light cameras within the county at this point, or the way the city is doing? No.
It's all part of the same thing.
Okay. All right. So if there's nothing else there, we'll move on to Zone 4. Member Verhey, anything to update us on?
Thank you. Just a couple updates. With all the changes through elections and what municipal elections, we no longer have a Zone 4 secretary. So I'm just on the cusp of sorting that out to get a new secretary. So there'll be a call out for that. Current secretary is still accessible and will help us out, but certainly well before February 22, which is our next meeting, we need to have a new secretary. And another vacancy, there's a Zone 4 board seat open now as well, just as a result of the municipal elections. One of the board members wasn't re-elected, so there'll also be a call out for nominations for a board seat for Zone 4 as well. And like I said, February 22, May 3rd, and September 20 of 2023 are our proposed meeting dates for Zone 4. I will be pushing the next one to be in person, so one of my tasks, I just got a digital file of all of the documentation for Zone 4 last night from the secretary. I didn't have access to a whole lot of information, so I'll be reaching out to the Ontario Association Chief of Police to coordinate meetings going forward. That's how it was before COVID put a halter on in-person meetings. So February 22 will hopefully be an in-person meeting.
Great. As we get closer, if there's any agenda items that you need input on from us, let us know. I'm not sure you wouldn't know what they are right now, so we'll wait till we get closer.
Sounds
Anything
good.
else then on Zone 4? Good.
Not for myself, if there's any questions.
Questions for Marty? Member Verhey? All right, thank you. So since we met at our last Police Service Board meeting on the 20th of September, Inspector Quenville and I attended that night a committee meeting of council to give a presentation and update. I think we were scheduled for 10 minutes and we took like an hour and 15. Not because it was bad, but it was very good conversation and interaction and dialogue with council members and whatnot about different things, which gave us some good feedback. And so I think the plan will be to try to do that twice a year moving forward. Not necessarily, we did it in, I think, June or May and September, but maybe spread out a little bit more, like a spring and fall, so that we have time in between and provide that update and opportunity for that dialogue if that works for everybody. It was a very beneficial opportunity to have that feedback and the support, I think, from council too on some of the topics that we covered. Just want to give you the update that the challenge coins now have been completely distributed So now the next phase will be any new officers that come to the detachment once they complete their probation period or what have you. So distribution went out to anybody that is away from the workplace right now or on assignment somewhere, but it's still part of Brant. All that's been done. All the people that were on vacation that we missed during the barbecues, any of that, they've all been caught up on. So that's great, and had some really good feedback. I went to Inspector Quenville talked about some of the sessions, the cultural diversity session. We were all invited to attend one of the platoon meetings, and I attended the one at the end of October with the Nova Vita trainer. And then I don't know which letter of platoon it was, but the platoon there was a couple of members who hadn't got their coin yet, and they reminded me that they were still waiting, and which I said that we had a plan. It was we were working on getting it out, so they were quite interested to know when that was going to happen. So I did attend that workshop that PC Murphy organized. I thought it was very interesting to hear from Nova Vita about the services that they provide beyond just what we know of in terms of being a women's shelter, but also the training that they provided the detachment staff on the cultural diversity that we're seeing with domestic violence and human trafficking, and it's not just sex trafficking. It can be like worker trafficking, like labor issues. She gave some examples of some different things. One of the takeaways for me for that was there's probably a greater need for services than what we realize for people who are most vulnerable and those in need with intimate partner violence. She gave some different stories about the work they do with their clients to help them get back on their feet. And some of them are very intense, a lot of work getting their, banking back and their IDs and trying to get all that back in their name and finding out that they've incurred all these debts I also want to highlight that our OPP staff are kind. Mayor Bailey, I know you're one of your core beliefs is about kindness and doing kind things for that. There was a situation, I guess, don't know any names, I don't need to know any names, but a suspected human trafficking victim that they were able to bring into the detachment 3:30 in the morning on one of their night shifts, and there was no place for her to go. Everything was full. The call list of all the different places she could go to, unfortunately, everything was full. And one of the highlights, I think, in that discussion was at 3:30 in the morning, we need answers. Like, there's not people answering phones at 3:30 in the morning. So you have a call list of all these resources, but not everybody necessarily is working at 3:30 in the morning. So lesson learned for that. But this person came to the detachment. They tried to find places for her. They couldn't. She had no shoes. And the officer, one of the officers that was dealing with her, gave her the shoes off her feet for this girl. And unfortunately, she left. She didn't stay. But our officer gave her her own shoes so that she had something, which kind of got up the conversation with PC Murphy about, maybe we should have access to a supply of some of these donated items from Nova Vita that officers can then use for those people. There's lots of donations that come into Nova Vita for women's clothing or different things like that, but should we have anything in the detachment that officers can use and have access to, so they're not necessarily having to give away their own shoes to these people. So that was kind of a light bulb moment for me that, what more can be done to support that, because that's important work that needs to be done. But the kindness of that officer to help that person in need, I thought that was really important. That's I think at the core of what our officers do, and that's the stuff that nobody really knows about, especially at 3:30 in the morning. So I just wanted to commend that officer for that, bringing that human element to that person in need. And even though they didn't stay, hopefully she was able to touch them somehow. Also, thank you to everybody that participated in the Remembrance Day services on behalf of the Police Services Board. I know we had representation across the board at the various services, so thank you for that. And I know Inspector Quenville plans to rotate around to the different services within the county, so that would be good too. It was kind of neat. I want to acknowledge that each of the OPP officers that did lay wreaths with us this year were also veterans of the Canadian military. So in St. George, I had the honor of presenting with Jordan, but I can't remember his last name.
Garten.
Gardner, thank you. He's a recent military veteran. Anyways, each of the different locations had a military veteran that are also serving as police LPP members. So I thought that was a really great way to do that as well. I went to the human trafficking presentation on the 22nd of November. It was a good sized room, and I think PC Murphy and her team, they've got some ideas on how they want to do things again and in different ways. And there weren't very many youth there. There's a couple of youth there, but mostly it was concerned parents or older folks in the community. And I think one of the lessons there was that human trafficking is not just sex workers; it's also like labor, enforced labor as well. That was a big message in that meeting. And I think they also had a whole bunch of different displays of all the different services for the county that's available. And the people that were at that meeting were surprised at the number of services. They had no idea that the number of services that were available. Each of them had a little tabletop display, and some of the folks were quite surprised to see some the breadth and depth of some of those services that were available. They also provided a little bit of a Indigenous women perspective on the human trafficking thing. They had a woman from Six Nations Police Services who specializes in that area, working with the OPP task force. So that was kind of interesting, given our proximity, to hear about what the work that they're doing on the Indigenous missing women's piece as well. And then lastly, we've had some conversations with, there's some interest in Mount Pleasant to start a community safety group. So trying to just connect the dots with Inspector Quenville's team so that they have the resources they need to get started. That'll be citizen driven, but it's encouraging to hear that there'll be something down that way for a community safety group. I think that covers it for now. It's always a busy time. Any questions on any of those? Okay. In terms of 2023 priorities, I'd like to suggest that maybe in January we add an agenda item. Inspector Quenville and I did a kind of a brainstorming session. I know communications for us has been a priority for the past couple years, and would suggest it probably is a priority continuing, but we have a couple of different ideas for Police Service Board in terms of priority areas that perhaps we can put that on the agenda for next meeting and we can talk about, so we can solidify that as a plan moving forward for 2023. And then I know Inspector Quenville can then perhaps talk a little bit about how that works on her side too. She has her own priorities, but we can have some as a Police Service Board. So I think that covers everything in item 12. We do have 2 in-camera items at this time. So I believe we'll need a motion to go in camera. Thank you, Mayor Bailey. Seconded by Member Brown. All in favor of that? Okay. We'll just let the technician Okay, thank you. We're back into the open session. No additional motions are required at this time. So we'll move on to item number 14. Our next meeting is now January 17th. Just a question of clarification. Do we have hybrid options or is it only in person?
Just in person.
Okay, just wasn't sure. So January 17th is our next meeting date, and motion to adjourn or just adjourn? Everybody's different. A motion to adjourn, please. Councillor Pierce.